Hey, I want to teach you an Astro hack on how to crush ADHD and boost productivity by using your birth chart and turning it into a clock. Now, you do this by looking at your zodiac sign because each zodiac sign is made up of a 2-hour increment. So when you're thinking about specific tasks that you want to get done, like running errands, cleaning, exercising, whatever the task may be, think about which zodiac sign is associated with that activity and try to schedule those tasks during the hours that are associated with that zodiac sign. And so each zodiac sign represents a 2-hour increment. And so the way that you turn your birth chart into a clock is that starting with your first house. Now, your birth chart is counterclockwise, but when you're using it as a clock, you're going to be using it clockwise, starting with the first house. So your first house is going to represent the hours of 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. And your 12th house is going to represent 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. And then your 11th house is about between the hours of 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. And then in your 10th house, that's going to be 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. and on and on and on. And I'll write all of this information below so you don't have to remember everything right now. But this is basically to tell you that you can schedule things based on when you're most astrologically compatible and receptive to it. Now, another consideration I do want you to make is that the planets have the ability to overpower the zodiac sign that it's in. So if you have specific planets in specific signs, that will change the energy a little bit. So say for example, you want to exercise, right? That's really represented by Aries. Now, I have Aries in my 10th house. So between the hours of 12 p.m. to 2 p.m., this is the best time for me to be most motivated to exercise. And this is why astrology is such a beautiful gift, because for the longest I used to look at all these productive strategists, productivity experts, and they would say that in order to have a productive day, you have to exercise first thing in the morning. And I always felt like such a loser. I would just be like, okay, you gotta exercise, right? And I would tell myself this constantly, and I just, for the life of me, couldn't get myself motivated, and I felt really shitty about it. But then eventually, and by the time I finally felt motivated to exercise, it's now 12 p.m. And instead of realizing that, hey, this is actually an astrological flow with me, I felt really shitty about myself because I was like, man, why did it take me till like so long to actually become productive? And it made me feel like I was behind, when in reality I was actually in complete flow with myself. So it's really important to check in with yourself and recognize what actually works for you, what is speaking to you, because it's always better to work with yourself rather than against yourself. But going back to what I was saying about how you can use the planets too. So while exercising is ruled by Aries, the planets that represent the zodiac sign have the same function. So if wherever you have Mars in your chart, even if it's not in Aries, this can also be a time that you have sort of that athletic inspiration during those 2 hours. And so say for example, you have Mars in Pisces, right? Now, it may be that you may be more inspired to taking actions related to Pisces themes, like if you wanted to volunteer for a charity organization, or if you wanted to meditate, or if you wanted to practice forgiveness. This is a great time to do it during those hours. But the other thing is that you can exercise doing Piscean things such as swimming, things like that. So the zodiac sign does influence the direction of that planet, but the planets that rule the specific signs, they have a very similar energy to them as well. So this is also something to keep in mind. Even though Aries is the sign that represents exercise, there are different types of exercising that can be found through the other zodiac signs. So for example, Libra might be playing tennis. It's a one-on-one sports, right? Things of that nature. You can just sort of like play with that energy. But this is really a great way to just be more productive, be more efficient, because you're going to be able to work with your chart. And there are a few different considerations that I do want to share with you. So for example, the cardinal signs are the zodiac signs that start the new seasons, and so these signs are great at starting things, but not necessarily maintaining and finishing them for the most part. Now, with that said, Capricorn is a cardinal sign, but it's an earth sign, and it is ruled by Saturn, the planet of consistency. So Capricorn has a much longer longevity to starting something and maintaining it for over a long period of time. But overall, like, if you're trying to do a certain task, you may find that if you have cardinal signs in that area of your life, try to create it so that you can maybe start something and then schedule it so that whatever it is you need to maintain and continue could be during the hours that are related to the fixed signs, because the fixed signs are really great at maintaining things, whereas the mutable signs, it's kind of a mixture of the two, but it also does vary. So for example, Geminis and Pisces are mutable signs. Now, Pisces is the laziest sign, and it doesn't necessarily, both of them don't necessarily have the best follow through. Gemini has a lot of enthusiasm. So with something like an air sign, it's great to be able to maybe do something with other people to keep you accountable. You know, make it a social setting. Whereas if you have Pisces, this is a time where maybe try to like arrange your life and find ways that you can automate things. Pisces' modern ruler is Neptune, and so it's very much about receiving support. So if you can sort of create automated passive support, this is a great way to use sort of that energy. Whereas Virgo, again, another earth sign, even though it's a mutable sign, so it kind of mixes, Virgos are across the board much better at starting things, maintaining things, and completing things. So essentially, this is good to know just so that you could work with this energy. And so, you know, even if you're not really that familiar with this, just in general, you know, knowing yourself, you might know like, oh, I'm really great at maintaining things, but I have a hard time initiating. In which case, work with the fire placements of your chart, or maybe recruit a fire sign or someone who's very motivating to help you to get started and get the ball rolling. You know, things of that nature. And similar to mutable signs, you know, if you want the support of someone, that's a great way to really get that support. So you can definitely take a look at what's showing up in your chart as sort of an indicator and a way to work through this. Now, another thing though is you can also look at like where your planets are in your chart. And so for example, in my chart, I have a lot of planets in my cardinal signs, so I'm great at starting things. I'm not great at maintaining and following through with it. And because I do have strong water and earth, water, earth. I don't have strong earth. I have strong water and air in my chart. When you have strong water energy, it's really important for you to feel inspired, for it to be important and meaningful to you. Like, you need that inner drive. That's really important. And then air sign is using the support of other people to keep you accountable. Create that social setting is going to be really beneficial for you. Something I love to do is co-working, for example. Okay. Now, if you have strong earth in your chart, it's great for you to find practical ways to maintain things and to see why it makes sense. Like the more it makes sense, the more practical it is, the more it benefits you in a tangible way, the more likely you are to maintain it. Because as practical as they are, if it doesn't make sense to them, they're not necessarily going to do it. And Virgos are a great example of that. You know, they're very good at starting, beginning, ending things, similar to Capricorns, but you need to give them an incentive. Whereas with fire signs, it's important for you to have that passion, that drive, and for the most part, you'll naturally, unless you have other things in your chart that creates a challenge, you're gonna naturally feel inspired to take action. But if that's something that you're finding you're unable to do, take a look at like what you can do to make it more inspiring. How can you be more passionate? How can you make it more fun, optimistic, enjoyable? Add some creative elements to your tasks, and that's really going to help you to really get the ball rolling. Something else I do want to leave you with is that your first house, it shows you the sign and any planets there, the planet that rules that sign, the aspects. All of these tell a story of the best way to navigate your life. I do have a video on that that I'd love for you to check out if you haven't already. It's called What the Fuck is Your Rising Sign? And I go over each element, each sign, and the best way for you to navigate your life, because your first house is what motivates you to get started. So each sign, each element has a specific motivating trigger, and so you can watch that video to learn more about that if you haven't already. And if you want to know the best way for you to get productive in your chart, oh wait, you know what, I want to mention something else before I forget. Now, some of you guys may get a little confused, and actually this is going to lead to my next part. So for example, I have Virgo, which is the sign of organizing, in the bottom of my chart in the middle of the night. And so I'm not usually like inclined to stay up in the middle of the night. I'm sleeping, so I'm not really organizing myself. But the ruler of Virgo, Mercury, is between the hours of 4 to 6 p.m. for me. It does have a little bit of a chaotic energy for me because of the aspects and stuff, but it is something that I can use. Now, but like in your case, like if for example, you have like something, an activity that you want to do that's not really active when you're awake, because that's like in the middle of the night when you're sleeping, or when you're in school, or maybe something is going on where you don't have access to that time. There are always different ways to redirect that. And if you want a little bit more support in figuring out like what that looks like for you, comment below, tell me your rising sign, give me one task that you want support in, like something that you want to get better at, you want to know the best way to go about doing it, what is the best time to do it. Comment below and I'll give you some insights. Thanks so much for watching and have a lovely day. Bye everyone.